First question, are you ready? Rest me now, rain for the morning. Show me how to suffer no harm. You never told me the end of the story. Where are you going? You never told me. Continue looking through the eyes of love, the eyes of love. I'm looking through the eyes of love, the eyes of love.
Hey friends, welcome to another episode of Area 312 Rock and Metal Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Kent, along with my co-host.
Rex.
And friends, our next guest, CCM Magazine, back in the 80s, they once labeled them the band that grew up in public. And when lead vocalist Sim Wilson joined Undercover in 1986 for the Branded album, his booming baritone certainly ushered the band into adulthood. It's our distinct pleasure today to welcome the one and only lead vocalist of Undercover, Mr. Sim Wilson. It's an honor, Sim. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure. It's great to be here. Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.
Yes, sir. It's quite an honor. And Sim, just to begin with, my first introduction to Undercover was in 1990. It was none other than the Balance of Power album. And I distinctly remember we still had Walkmans back then. I would lay on my bed at night listening in my Walkman to the Balance of Power cassette. You guys took me on so many journeys with that album, and my mind just stretched far and wide and full of wonder. And from there, Sim, I backtracked to the earlier stuff of the band's catalog and then worked my way forward. With that said, Sim, we always like to kind of start off at square one, and I'd like to ask, please tell us about your musical upbringing. Was there music in your home of any kind, and who were some of your influences?
Good question. So, just to kind of go all the way back, I am I'm a pastor's son. So yes, there was always music in my house. My mother's side of the family is extremely musical, and but that didn't really mean anything, right? I mean, just because you had some musical genes doesn't really mean you're going to have any kind of gift. But so I always grew up in church, and I was a typical pastor's son. 3 times a week. I'm Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. Every other night that there was something going on, I was always there. So that's how I was raised, and so church and church music was always a very important part of our family, and so that was the background I had. When I was in my teen years, as my mom forced me to do, I mean requested that I do, I sang in the choirs at my churches, and maybe learned a little bit about how to sing at that time, but I never had any professional training or anything like that. So that's really my background of what got me started in singing. I'll keep on advancing forward, so you can kind of see where it stopped and how I got into this band. I went to college at Lee University in Cleveland, Tennessee, and that's the town I currently live in. But I went to college at Lee University for 1 semester. I had actually broken up with my first girlfriend, and I will confess that was Ricky Michelle. Later went on to be an Adam again, and anyway, we had a great, and we're still great friends. But so I had gone away to college. And this was a time in my life when I was really searching for God's direction in my life. And you know, I had been a partying kid. You know, I was a typical pastor's kid. You know, I was as wild as you could possibly get. And I'm glad my parents didn't know a lot about that. But in any event, that's who I was. And but I did meet Christ when I was 18, actually March 11th, 1981, was when I became a true follower of Jesus, and I accepted him as my personal savior and went on my own journey and not just my parents' journey. And so I went away to college, and I was really in that position where I really knew God was going to use me, wanted to do some things. And so I just I just kept praying about it, and I went to a festival called Ichthus. You guys might know that festival, a very, very famous festival. It went on for many, many years at Asbury College, where we've had some recent incidents occur again with that revival that recently happened. But it was at that first Christian rock concert that I've ever went to, that festival, that I said, Lord, I really felt like he was leading me in this direction. I said, if this is what you want me to do, I would love to sing on this stage. And so I'll back up to say that I went back to California with this, bent on being a vocalist. I got into the band Martis with Gene Eugene and Greg, all the guys from Adam Again. We had a small band. Then we played with Undercover for one time, and was an opening act for Undercover. And it was just after that they lost Bill and asked me to sing. And so we're about to end this long story that I joined the band, began to sing with Undercover. That was in 1984, and the first time we ever left California, just a couple of months after I joined, we not only went and headlined that festival. Not only did we play on that stage, but headlined that festival. So, it just shows you how faithful God is. And when, he put me there, he put me here. So for all these years, that's what I've been doing. I really never had any background to do it, never knew how to do it. I just kind of followed what I felt like I was being led to do. So that's my background in music and how I got involved.
As it come as such a big surprise, I've got to make you realize that I'm not what you think I am. I'm nothing more than just a man. Oh, yeah. I'm just a man. I'm just a man. I'm just a man. I'm just a man.
Sam, I also sang in the church choir back in the day. Now, did you guys at your church, did y'all still wear the robes? Did y'all ever wear robes?
Well, at that particular time, I did not wear a robe, but I've worn many a robe. And in fact, in one Undercover concert, I think there's some photographs out there. We actually played at a church where they had us get ready back in the choir room, and we put on their robes and came out in their robes. I don't think we really made any friends that night, but yeah, wearing choir robes was something pretty normal for me. Yes.
I've often wondered why, back in the day when you sang in the choir, why did you have to wear a robe? Maybe that was just tradition. I don't know. I don't know where it came from, but anyway,
if you know human beings, you know church, you know that no one knows how to dress in any consistent manner, so you never knew what you were going to get. I think it was simply a easy way to cover up some mistakes, if that makes sense.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Well, so Sam, did you have any particular? I know you said that you grew up in church and you're a PK, and were there with your vocal style, was there anybody specifically, an artist or anything that might have influenced you in that regard? Or did you just kind of grow up singing in the choir and you just had your own,
No, No, I was a rock kid, and I loved rock. My first, my first entree into rock music was when I was about 15, and I became a huge Rush fan. That was really my entree in. That Rush has always been my favorite band, and so that's where I got started. But I always gravitated toward toward the vocalists like Ronnie James Dio and Ian Gillan, and those true rock vocalists that just were very unique and could do some very unique things. And those are if I had influences, those were my influences. And maybe in later years, vocalists like Chris Cornell, people who just really stood head and shoulders above many of the rock vocalists, just because they were just so talented and maybe a little bit different. So yeah, that's kind of where I went. I guess Dio was my first when I was very, very young. He was kind of the, I got Rainbow Rising and just kind of followed the trends. I kind of left that, because he went a little, he kind of went into more of a hair band kind of era, which wasn't really me, but in his early days, man, I loved that voice he had. It was just amazing.
Oh yeah, very majestic.
I didn't emulate it because I didn't know how, but I did love it. I can tell you.
So Sim, if I can put you on the spot, since you're saying you're a huge Rush fan and I am too, if I could put you on the spot, could you? I'll do this. Could you give me like your top 3 favorite Rush albums, if you can do that, or if it's too hard to pick 3? I know they're all great albums.
You've got to, my first one is probably, because I'm a live person.
Sure.
So, All the World's a Stage was my first album, and that's where I really learned about, being a, it was just, to me, it was just amazing. This 3-piece and how much music came out of that stage. And I just love that. And of course, Moving Pictures, you can't really, that's one where you almost have to choose that. It's just, there's such great songs on that. From there, there's just so many good ones. I don't know where I could really choose, to almost choose a third. In fact, their most recent was in my mind one of their best. And I saw that concert a couple of different times, but that's where I started, and I really liked their live music, and I saw them live 4 or 5 times. Once in Roanoke, Virginia. My first rock concert was Rush, and I saw them in Roanoke, Virginia, playing for 3,000 people. You kind of think about kind of where they went to and the length of their career, and then to see, to remember that they just played for just a few people in a small little arena, and just amazing when you think back.
So what tour would that have been then, Sim, that you saw them with, playing to 3,000 people?
What was that? I'll have to think back to the album. I can't even remember the album right now that they were touring on, but I'll think about it.
Okay.
Wait for me until the dawn, until I'm free up on the river.
So Sam, Branded was your first recording, if I'm not mistaken. It was your first studio release, I should say, with Undercover. Following that, speaking of live albums, was 3/28/87. Sim was, and you mentioned playing in a band with Gene Eugene prior to Undercover. Was Branded your first studio venture then to record in the studio with Undercover?
No, actually, the first recording that we did with Undercover was they put me on a single of Boys and Girls.
Yes.
Boys and Girls was coming out right as I joined the band. It wasn't even out yet. So I joined the band touring on that, with that music. When I wasn't even on I wasn't on the album. So it was a shocker to everybody to hear me do them live and then to listen to the album. So Undercover, they really tried to get to get Maranatha to allow us to put me on the, kind of on the vocals, but they just didn't want to spend the money. And it was already recorded, it was already in the can, and so I didn't care. I was just, it didn't matter to me. So I just went. They recorded the one single, so that's the first time I recorded. And then you're right, the very next time would have been, when we really dramatically started shifting our music, and I think to everybody's like shock that we shifted as hard as we did when we put out that first recording. Yeah.
So, I used to have all the individual albums, but now I have, and back behind me is Iro's Falling, but, I've got these collector sets, and I noticed on this one, it does have your, boys and girls, and it says Sim Wilson vocals. I didn't realize that was specifically done as a single. I thought, was that actually on that album as a single track?
No, we actually had 40, that was back when you can actually have 45s,
Right.
these things around with the big
Yeah.
out and the whole schmear, and so yeah, we would bring some of those with us and actually sell them as part of that, because people wanted to hear my voice, because I was the one doing the concerts, and so the new
Right.
people didn't really understand, so it was kind of a transitionary way to introduce me and have something to put out there. Yeah.
Well, was recording them with the band, was that something that you easily adapted to in the studio? And another part to that question, Sim, is when Undercover recorded in the studio, would you guys do scratch tracks together and like do the keeper drum tracks and a few other rhythm tracks and build, or did you guys use click tracks in the studio?
They're a little bit of a combination. Not many click tracks were used, but some were used, especially since we had in the MIDI years, we're pulling keyboards in and things like that. But was the record? I guess the first question was the recording process seamless and easy? I was so young, you know what I mean? I really had never recorded before, so it was a new venture for me. But I adapted to it, very, very well. I was just so young. I really didn't have a vocal style when that first album came out. I was just doing the best I knew, and we were recording these songs and playing them and practicing them. But how we would record is typically we would put all the rhythm section down, and I would sing scratch vocals on a live setting while we were laying down all of the foundation, and then I would go back and re-sing after everything was recorded. So I was typically the last one to record, other than maybe a few overdubs of guitars and things like that. It was typically in the can, and then they had me finish it out. So that was kind of nice, because I got to hear all of the pieces of the music and really be able to think about that, and how the vocals kind of would lay over top of that. So, and typically we would record the vocals on a couple of different tracks and merge them together from time to time, just doubling them, or I would harmonize with myself, or whatever the case might be. So that's kind of how it worked. I typically could record a song, either 30 minutes to 45 minutes. Sometimes on the really difficult songs where there might be some challenging things, or they were brand new lyrics and we were kind of piecing them together at the time, that might take an hour and a half. But it did not take me long to record the songs. We just kind of worked right through them.
And Sim, would they kind of give you, carte blanche to do whatever you wanted vocally, or was there songs where they're like, hey, we're thinking about this sort of a style of singing or vocal presence, or was that pretty much up to you?
I had complete carte blanche. They might have some, that they, in fact, from a lyrical perspective, sometimes I would kind of, rephrase things or come up with new things. And, that happened, even like on Devotion with Devotion, Joe's song. And I kind of came up with that whole, middle section of that, raise your hands, it's time to fly. We kind of adopted that in. So there was always allowance for creativity. And I got more creative over time. I think I was just, again, too young on Branded. There was a lot of time that went from Branded to Balance of Power, and boy, did I have a lot more experience when it came to Balance of Power, vocally, and maybe even had had a bit of my own style by then. And of course, I think you can listen to the albums back to back and see how maybe my voice matured over time and changed a little bit, and how I learned to use it a little bit better as time went on.
And it was a bit surprising, not in a bad way at all, Sim. I mean, I'm an Undercover fan, but to your point, and I mean this, you guys, when I was first introduced to you with Balance of Power, excuse me, you guys didn't specifically sound like them, but you guys kind of were in the same wheelhouse, maybe stylistically, and actually a lot by appearance. Kind of reminded me of the Cult back then. But your voice, I first heard you on Balance, and you had a little bit of I could tell you guys weren't metal, but there was a little bit of grit to your voice. But then going back and then hearing Branded for the first time, and then the live album, that's where your voice, and especially for your age, was very surprising, because it was this booming, gothy type baritone, and it fit the music. But I could tell a style change there.
Well, and I think you just mature over time, and things change, and you always want to evolve some. I mean, everybody wants to. That doesn't mean you're evolving to a better place. You just, I don't know why musicians always want to evolve somewhere. And so I think that's what happened. But I was, it was you can imagine how shocking it was for people to hear my style of voice, singing the songs that were written at a whole different time with Bill as the vocalist. And Bill and I are great friends. He's an amazing guy, and has been a great pastor and great mentor to so many. But I was just a completely different animal. And Joe and Jim and Gary, they all loved that. You know what I mean? They wanted it. They wanted to evolve away from that as much, and maybe that's where my voice began to lend that ability to kind of move us to a new place in music, and it became much harder and much beefier, and I think that's where we all love to be anyway, and that's where we'll stay, for the balance of the years that we have left, and the few concerts that we'll be able to do.
So, Sam, what was the approach then? And I'm a fan of the works with Bill too. I like some good Ramones and stuff like that. Pogo punk is what I call it. And
right.
I think the CCM back then was afraid to call it punk, so it was new wave or something. But
right, it's
okay. I love the stuff with Bill too. It's fun music. It's good music.
It is.
So, Sam, what was the approach then? I didn't realize it was news to me. I think it's awesome learning the history, hence part of why we're here, that you were in a band with Gene Eugene, the late, great Gene Eugene. And Sam, what was the approach then that Ojo and company and Jim used when they said, hey, Sam, we'd like for you to join Undercover? How did that transpire?
You're gonna. This is a great story. So it transpired like this. I sang. We opened for Undercover one time, and I'm going to tell you what it was like as a small local band. Like the band's name was Martis, and so it was Gene Andrusko, Gene Eugene, later on Paul, Greg, myself, all in this band, and so. We opened, we did the best we could, but it was really daunting because when you walked up to an Undercover show, here we are coming in, we're just young kids, you know what I mean? We're playing with this Undercover, has such a big reputation. Literally, the line for the show wrapped around the entire city block. It was just incredible when you actually looked on stage. You were in there. There was 800 screaming people like that were packed in like sardines. So it was daunting playing with Undercover, because even back then they were just a major draw, and and there was a lot of excitement about the music. So they got this, we did that one show with them, and then Gary was friends with the drummer from Martis. And so that's kind of how we so it was through that relationship that Gary would come to our rehearsals from time to time. We had a little bit more of a relationship with Gary. But so fast forward to your question was how did I get there? I was traveling on the Garden Grove freeway one day in rush hour traffic. I mean, there must have been 30,000 cars, if there was a car, on the Garden Grove freeway in Southern California. And all of a sudden behind me comes up a yellow Toyota truck, flashing his lights and honking his horn and waving me over. I'm thinking, my Lord, is there something wrong with my car? I mean, what's going on? So I pull over to the side, and out gets Gary Olson out of the driver's seat. He rushes up to me and goes, I mean, cars are flying by. I mean, he grabs me. He goes, we lost our vocalist. Sim, you have to try out for the band. And so that's how it started. I went to a rehearsal. I tried out. I sang the songs with everyone, met everyone, and they called me back about a week later to come back and talk to them. They handed me 3 albums and said, learn these. We'll be back in a week. So I had 1 week of practice to learn 3 albums worth of music and get started. So that's how it happened. It was that easy and that quick. We just seemed to click. And I think they liked my vocal style and could see, some opportunities to do some new things. And that's how it worked. But of course we traveled and played those songs for many, many months, because Brandon didn't come out for some time beyond that.
I can remember when you're talking about the line of people and Undercover being the draw back then, and I can certainly remember Sim when the song "God Rules" was kind of like the heaviest thing in CCM at the time. That was something back then.
That is true. And then when I started singing it was heavier. You know what I mean? Things got heavier from and not lighter. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yes, I mean, you're 100% right. It was a very, very unique time, and we were doing something complete, and it's everybody wants to think they were, they kind of broke all the grounds, but I assure you, because I was there, man, there was just nothing going on like what we were doing out there in the world of Christian music. And we had some great success for it, and paid some human price for it as well, with how we were reacted to by church pastors and people like that. But God was good, and we have some great stories that go along with some of those times where we were basically not allowed to play, but God intervened anyway.
Sure. Rex, were you going to ask something? I'm sorry.
No, I'm thinking though.
Okay. Well, Sim, while Rex is taking a moment there, I'm reminded of the Lord Jesus, and you talking about the flack, and I can only imagine the flack that you all took. And, you know, I always like to differentiate. I look at the Lord Jesus, God who came in the flesh, and Jesus, the Son of God, and, you know, the religious people. I always distinguish the religious people from the Christ followers, you know, and I'd like to ask about something, and it is off the Boys and Girls album, but Sim, I'd never encountered this. You talking about Undercover being one of a kind back then in CCM, and you guys certainly were. You guys broke the mold for who you were back then, no doubt. I was absolutely surprised. This is something that I've only seen from an Undercover release, and you might know the story behind this. Slaughter of the Innocents from Boys and Girls. I think it's so awesome, like the message. And I remember getting chills the first time I heard it. But this is a track, friends, on this compilation, or not compilation, this box set, if you will. I've never encountered this. It starts off with Boys and Girls, but the very first song that's not even listed is Slaughter of the Innocents. And you have to rewind after the first song starts to get there. Sim, how did you guys pull that off? I mean, how was that done?
Well, Slaughter of the Innocents, it was a song like none other back then, because it you know, that is really out of the heart and mind of Joe, Ojo.
Mm-hmm.
And it was delving into something that music really wasn't doing back then, and that was a very strongly contested political, you know, issue.
Yes,
and
it is.
And so I think that, you know, Joe grew up, you know, he grew up at, you know, and had some Catholic heritage and things like that. So I think that's where, you know, maybe that issue was very important to him, and that's his song. I mean, you know, that was completely his doing. We never did it live except for one time, and that was at a pro-life rally. We actually played a pro-life rally in California with, you know, with some very, you know, with some much softer acts, but that song was played there, and I think it was because it kind of took that issue and just kind of was just so powerful to drive that home, and so that was, you know, that was really the only time we ever did it live, but it is an amazing song, I have to say.
Ojo, of course, I know live in concert, you know, he plays keys and everything. In the studio, did Ojo also play the bass guitar?
Only on one album, and that was on Devotion.
Uh-huh.
So we never had. It was always keyboard bass, no string bass, as long as I was in the band. But on, you know, on that particular album, on Devotion, he played string bass, and that's where we kind of again evolved a little bit, and he played string bass, but again, and even some of the live shows he played string bass, but not all of them. And we had to recreate that string bass on keyboard bass because it was just easier to pull off live for because all the other songs had heavy keyboard. So it was really hard to kind of go back and forth. But there are shows where he would have the string bass and leave the key, you know, leave the kind of protected world behind the keyboards and come out and actually play string bass. It was a lot of fun, you know, during that time. But that was just on Devotion.
And that's just a stellar album too. Rex, did you think of what you were wanting to say? I don't want to.
Well, pretty much then, Sim, what you're telling me is the guys in the band, they really wanted you as the vocalist, and they really didn't have anyone else in mind. Is that correct?
That's right. I don't know that and now, if, you know, they may say something otherwise, but I don't know that they tried anybody else out. I don't, you know, I haven't even asked them that question. I guess I just, you know, it happened pretty quickly, and I just kind of stepped into it, and it was a very humbling thing to kind of step into. All of a sudden, you know, in 1 week, I was a touring, you know, singer in a rock band, you know, from whatever life I had led before. I took a whole different step. So, but yeah, no, I don't think there was a, you know, kind of a big process. And and we know, and to say this, even though, again, when I left and went to Florida and other, there were other people on other albums and things like that, I think we all will tell you, and I think it's been in interviews recently, we know that this is the band here. You know, this is the chemistry that works, and this is the, you know, because you can, you know, lots of bands have lots of different players, and people come and people go and things like that. But we know that this version of Undercover was very special. It's very special to us. And we know that it's the one that still plays today, you know, regardless of anyone else that has been in the band or not. Yeah.
Well, you guys are in a classic lineup, and I say that with respect to all members that have been in Undercover. But yes, when I think of Undercover, it's Sim, Jim, Ojo, and Gary Dean Olson. And friends, you'll never find a combination of guys that have a collective group of cooler names. I mean, you know. So let me ask you, Sim, what do you remember about that night at Magic Mountain on 3/28/87? I'm sure it was an electric night because it's captured and it sounds wonderful.
I can tell you that that was probably one of the most overwhelming nights that we ever played. And the reason is because here we were at that point, we were at the very top of where we had been. You know, we were at the top of our popularity level. We were getting lots of opportunities. And getting to do those shows at Magic Mountain was unbelievable, because we kind of stepped up the game on the production. We stepped up the game on our costuming and backdrop, because remember, I mean, we were a band that we're like we're almost like a garage band out there playing most of the time. We didn't have any backdrops, or, you know, we weren't a striper, you know what I mean? We didn't have yellow and black or any, we had no color coordinated anything. We just got up there and played, you know what I mean? And let the music do the talking. And but that night we did step up our production levels to a new level. And to get out there and hear the crowds, I'll never forget it as long as I live. It was just absolutely mind-numbing, how loud the fans were at Magic Mountain that night, and just I remember just it was breathtaking, and almost couldn't sing the songs to hold back the emotions, just because it was just so unbelievable that we had that much support in that arena. So it was an amazing night. One that I'll again, we were just backstage having fun like we normally did, but when you got out there and just saw that, it was something special for sure.
If you don't mind my asking, Sam, and this is a little more of a candid question.
Yeah.
You were still in your 20s during this time, correct?
I was.
I'm just looking at this track.
I joined the band when I was 21. You know, so that's so 3 years later, I would have been 24 going on 24 at the time. Yeah.
Well, I'm just looking at some of the songs and the tracks here. You know, Is Anyone Thirsty? I'm Just a Man. Cry Myself to Sleep. Your voice is so amazing. It was so rich, you know, and I can think of one other artist that had that very rich baritone that you were using at the time, and that was Michael Dean of The Call, somebody whom I dearly respected his abilities too.
Absolutely, of course.
So anyway, good stuff. Now, Sam, moving forward here, something else in 1987. Now, this slipped by me because, again, I encountered Undercover with Balance of Power and then loved the band. And if these guys have albums from the past, let me go investigate. This flew right by me until really just recently. You might have to correct me here if I'm getting my information wrong, but I didn't realize until just recently in doing my homework that you and Jim, I believe around 1987, you two went and formed a band called Boys Club, and there's like two complete albums full of demos. Is that correct? And what can you tell us about Boys Club?
100% correct. We formed our own band. Joe, we had played so much, and at the time when I joined the band, we were playing 200 to 250 shows a year. I mean, we were playing literally almost every night of the week. We all had there were families and all the problems that come from touring and all the issues, and so life had begun to dig its claws into our psyche and our ability to go forward. And so we took a hiatus. And people say, well, did you break up? We really didn't break up. We just decided we needed some time. And so, of course, I was a workhorse, and so was Jim. We always have been. We could play every night. So he and I decided we were going to go forward, and we started Boys Club and started playing the Hollywood club circuit, the Whiskey, the Roxy, the Troubadour, all of them. I mean, we were playing 3 to 4 nights per week, in the Hollywood club scene, we were trying to land a secular deal, and so we played our hearts out, wrote tons of songs, and that was a wonderful time. It was one of those times where we just kind of broke off, went in our own direction, wrote all new songs and just kept playing. And we developed a following that was pretty significant, and we did get some very, very good looks. But that was the time, and you guys will know this time, right at the time that we could have gotten signed, is when the whole kind of like Guns N' Roses movement kind of started. So if you remember how big Guns N' Roses got when they came, so that prompted a whole stylistic change in the whole rock set of things, from more of a whatever you want to call it, just alternative sound, to now a much more kind of like rock that was moving into more of a hair band style, where we just didn't fit. And it was because of that transition and that timing that we didn't get signed. And maybe that was the best thing that ever happened to us, because we went from there, took half of those songs, and Joe brought songs, and then we went back, we came back together, and that's how Balance of Power came to be. But that's why Balance of Power has songs on it that I was heavily influenced. And I wrote a lot of the lyrics in Boys Club. Jim wrote them as well, but I had a lot more freedom from a creativity standpoint on the Balance of Power, on the Boys Club side, and then transitioning into Balance of Power.
And 3 of those brilliant songs I took note of, because Love Me Dangerously, that's a ripping rocker on that album. And then we have Time. That's a slow but powerful burn. And then we have Land of Luxury that just kind of smacks you back and forth. I love all those songs. You answered one of my questions, Sam. I was going to ask if Undercover had broken up, but you mentioned everybody's need for a hiatus during that time. Sam, is it possible at all? Because when I made this discovery, I went and listened to these demos, and they are certainly listening worthy. Sim, is there any way, because there are vendors that appreciate the rock and metal artists, and those especially that espouse a Christian message, but is there any way to get those demos released? I know that a few were on the remastered Balance of Power from the Bandcamp, but there's a whole lot more to offer. Is that something that might be able to be released for the fans?
I always wanted to, and what's ended up happening is Jim's used a lot of those songs in his new Moral Decay project. So he's used some of those, and we never kind of went back in as Boys Club and recorded those. Everybody wanted us to. I wanted us to. For whatever reason, I think it was more because Jim wanted to kind of, use some of those songs in his next project. But now we all know, and we're all at an age where it's like, let's just put as many recordings out as we humanly can. I've always been a proponent to go back and do that, because the lineup that we had was really quite good, and it was a powerful band. So I'm a fan of it, and I've been pushing it. But we'll see where we get to.
Well, I wish you well in that endeavor, and here's the hope in Jim. If you ever, the reason why is because, I respect the fact that Jim has continued to use some of those with Moral Decay, but that was a time capsule. That was 87, and you can't recapture that in that time frame. So here's the hoping for fans like me.
We would love to. I would love to do that, and I honestly think we should. So I appreciate you saying so.
Yes, sir. Well, I'd like to also ask you. I thought this was neat. Now, there are exceptions to every rule, and Sam, as far as I know, this was a kind of a one-time thing. During that time period, there was a 1988 recording with you and Bill Walden, the initial vocalist for Undercover, and you all did "Oh Come All Ye Faithful." And I thought it was neat because there's the whole band. Excuse me. There's you and Bill, and of course you're celebrating Christ the King, and everybody's in one accord, of course. And just tell me how that came about, that the band got back together with Bill and y'all did "Oh Come All Ye Faithful."
I think there was just that was a Maranatha compilation that they were trying to put out, and they asked us to do that, and we just decided that it'd be kind of cool to bring Bill back in and kind of do something where give him a nod. He was still out playing at that time in a band called 441. If you guys remember that, he went on to do some other things as well, but so that's how that came about. There was it was just for a compilation that we chose that song, and went back and did that. So but it was a lot of fun. It was always good. And usually whenever Bill's around, we'll bring him up on the stage to at least do something, because I mean I have a great level of respect for him as a human being, and just a great brother in the Lord. So we always try to bring him up if we can.
You bet. Well, I know I've mentioned Balance a lot, but we're also going to talk about Devotion and Onward. But
just to talk about Balance, the one thing to remember about Balance of Power, as before you ask your question, is it's on the heels of a very, very significant emotional time for Jim. His wife had died. That's where the song "Eyes of Love" came from. That's our only #1 song that we ever put out as a band, was "Eyes of Love," and so that it came. Here we are getting back together, but also and had that huge emotional kind of ripping that was happening in our hearts because of that time. So a lot of times the lyrics can kind of be molded by that, and so a lot of that stuff, including "Eyes of Love," really come from that experience. But that's the backdrop of that. But ask the question you had. I'm sorry if I interrupted there.
Well, no, it's let me just tell you what I had, Sam. This was interesting. Yeah. As I mentioned, whenever you came on board with Undercover, your vocals at the time, they helped really usher the band into adulthood, if you will. And we get to Balance of Power. And so beginning with Branded, you guys started singing about some of the dark things of life and some of the need for, hey, look, there's pain and we cry and there is God in your darkest hour. But it wasn't like the old school cheerleader stuff. This was, hey, we recognize there's this other side of life and we're going to address that now. And some of my notes for Balance of Power, it was an album full of mystery and melancholy. And I do remember reading an article regarding, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't Jim's wife, late wife, was it Debbie?
Yeah, Debbie was her name, correct.
I remember reading an article back then, and back in 1990, and I kind of knew that's what was happening at the time. But I have in here, Sam, you are the author to the lyrics of The Eyes of Love.
That's right.
And I had some questions because it's a beautiful, mysterious, and very beautiful in a very deep way. Sam, a million questions burning from the flame that melted you. Could you shine some light on what you were meaning lyrically there?
That simply was, the what happens to anyone who goes through that experience. It's the question of why, why did this happen? This person that was so young and vibrant and caring, and we had just gotten married and all the things. So there's so many questions that go on in those kind of times where someone is taken from you just that quickly, and there's really no. She had a very rare blood disease, and so while she just went in for something that was very normal, died 24 hours after she got to the hospital. And so it was just like, why, Lord, why does this, and that is, so, from the flame that melted you was just really, a picture of death, of someone that was just evaporated, and you just all of a sudden you went from hugging this person and sitting down and having dinner to they're gone, they're no longer there. And it just brings up so many questions in your mind, and you can question God, and you can question people, and you can question doctors, and there's just so many, and that's really where that lyric came from.
Was that also, Sam, the scarlet tragedy that you were singing about? Was that kind of a poetic term for death?
It's just a total poetic term for death. It's one of those things that just is such a, when someone is taken from you, it's just so tragic, and and it just the love that you have, and so that's exactly what that was. But so yes.
And my last question about that song, Sam, Still 6 Steps from By Your Side. Was there any significance to the Still 6 Steps?
That's the 6 feet underground that we're all going to be someday. And really that's where that came from. 6 steps away, 6'12", 6 feet, 6'12" steps. We're that close, but that far from our loved ones that pass away. So, that's really where that picture came from. Yeah.
Sure. Well, before moving on, just, would like to say that, we respectfully remember Miss Debbie, and we'll always respectfully remember her.
That was just a crazy time. It's hard to really, how much that influenced us from that point on. It was something else for sure. But he got through it, and Jim is Jim was a trooper. He kept playing. He just never stopped. And I think it just gave him more fervor for music, and he just kept driving forward.
Smile of your spirit and the glory of your soul. Aren't you so happy to be free and flying in the air? So wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
Sim Devotion, such another dynamic and wonderful album. You guys, when that came out, it was just four on the floor, both guns blazing. I mean, we had Work It Out, which was a barn burner of a song. You had Man Oh Man. That included the horns in there. And then you had Devotion. I mean, my goodness. And we, Promenade, just another brilliant album. Sim, to me, the band, you guys, from Balance to Devotion, in my humble opinion as a fan, you guys were at the pinnacle of Undercover. And then you and Gary Dean Olsen in 1994, when I was highly anticipating the next release, and it was a wonderful release called Forum. But Sim, you and Gary Dean weren't there. If I may ask, Sim, where did you go?
I moved to Florida. So I left the band and moved to Florida, and they wanted to keep playing as Undercover and keep doing things, and back then, it was a lot different. We didn't have the same technologies that we're allowed today, so that we can all, we're basically sitting around a conference table, albeit over the internet, but we're enjoying some very close times. But we didn't have that back then. So when you moved halfway across the country, at that point we were like, well, maybe we need to keep going. We're going to have to get other individuals to play. And so Joe wanted to do Forum, and that's where that came from. It was only because that he wanted to do something different, and I was just not there, and so they didn't kick me out. I left, and it was for some good reasons, but I miss the fact that wasn't able to be a part of that, but in any event, that's how that one worked out. But and only just because of distance and time.
Let me turn that coin around. And I'm glad that I'm talking to you today. Sim, what brought you back?
Well, good question. We decided to start getting together with some reunions, and when we do reunions, it was this. Like I said, it was this group, this lineup that we all think of when we go to play, and that is the lineup that we wanted to go with, and I never left because I didn't love anybody, but I came to a position of being able to travel and be there and be a part of it, and it wasn't like we were touring and playing every day. So that's where I walked back in and began to be with the band. They wanted me to sing again.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then Sim, a decade after 1992's excellent album Devotion, I was elated to see this being released. In 2002, we were blessed with I Rose Falling. Friends out there, if Undercover was the band, and indeed they were, Undercover was the band that grew up in public, as stated by CCM, then 2002's I Rose Falling was the band at its most mature. Sim, this marked a decade since you last sang on an Undercover album. So what was the catalyst for the band then deciding to release new material? What made you guys say, hey, look, guys, let's do an album. It's time.
I think it was just that. I think we just said, hey, let's do an album. It's time. It was just as simple as that. I think we had songs. Jim had been writing, had sent me certain songs to write lyrics for. And we got together and began to record that. That's when it became a lot easier to record. So we had Pro Tools now. had come onto the scene. We could record ourselves for a very, we didn't need a budget anymore. We could just record it ourselves, and that's exactly what we did. And that's where I Rose Falling came to be. And I Rose Falling was the beginning of some shifts in a lot of ways for the band. Shifts in Joe's faith, shifts in a lot of different things. But that's the last recording we got to do. So many people don't, it's a very, very big departure from our really heavy sound in many ways. And a lot of people don't like it. And it's not my favorite album. I'll express that. But it was a necessary album, and I think we did it, and it was a good creative album, and we all appreciated being a part of it. And I would just say that if we ever do new music, and I will admit, and we'll tell everybody on this cast that we are talking about it right now, it will come back with a vengeance. So don't think we're down forever. If we come back, it'll be with as powerful a sound as we can drive, but that was a little bit of a departure from that, with a lot of kind of acoustic baritone guitars and different sounds that haven't been on any of the albums. But some great songs there. I mean, I got to participate on a song about addiction called Medicine and other things. So there was some real meaningful material on that for me, and so I appreciate it because of that.
I think it's, for me, I Rose Falling. I don't know. I'm kind of weird with my music. Sometimes I have albums for seasons. To me, This is a great, ironically, there's a song called Fall on here, but this is a great autumn/fall album. It's a great, when the air's crisp, I love to put this on. I love to put Alice Cooper's The Last Temptation on. I don't know why, but anyway, a lot of maturity on this, but I look forward to that album coming back with a vengeance. So
but we'll see if we can pull that off. But there's certainly talk about it, and I would love nothing more. And people ask about that, and ask one of the I'm sure we'll get to it, but one of the questions is, how can we do that? But maybe we'll answer that as time goes on. But no four people love each other more than these guys. We're brothers that you can't even, when you spend as much time as I have with these three men. I mean, there's just something special about it, if that makes sense. We're closer than you can ever imagine, and our love for each other has remained really, really strong over the years. No one, even families bicker and fight, but we don't. We have such a respect and love for each other, and somehow, when we get back together and we get into that rehearsal studio and start playing a few of the songs, it is just just a special thing, and we all know it, and so maybe that's what drives us forward.
Part of the friendship, Sim, that I've noted, and I'm going to get a little bit candid here, if I may, and if we need to hit that pass button, that's certainly there on the table. And I say this with respect to all Undercover members. I'd actually reached out to Ojo about 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, because I love Undercover and certainly know who Ojo Taylor is. And you guys, I'd like to talk after a little bit about Audio Feed 2022 when we
Absolutely.
get to this segment. But I think you guys were gearing up for Audio Feed, but I had reached out to Ojo, and it was a matter of scheduling and what we were hoping to glean with our personal schedule. I don't think it was going to work out for Ojo, so it never came to fruition, but the Lord wanted us here today. But what I'd like to ask, talking about that friendship and brotherhood, Sim, and I think I remember hearing Ojo or reading an interview with Ojo, and you had mentioned, we're all on journey in life, and sometimes people's life perspective shifts or changes or whatever. I think Ojo, because Ojo has admittedly, correct me where I'm wrong, but I think Ojo has stated that he professes to be an atheist these days. And somebody asked him about that with the other guys in Undercover. And I think he said very politely, he said, the one thing I think that bothers me, and I'm paraphrasing, is that he feels like he might have disappointed you the most, or he said something to that effect, but it was very, from the heart and loving. And my question, Sim, is with regard to perhaps worldview differences. You yourself as a Christian and Ojo professing to be an atheist, we can all learn something. How can we love one another and get along in life? Yourself as a Christian, Jesus said to love your neighbor as yourself. Let's talk about that mutual respect between Christian and atheist.
Well, I will tell you that that Joe's journey in his life and his leaving of the faith, at least his professed leaving the faith, was a maturing time for me and for, I think, everyone, because now we're impacted with not just somebody we heard about that left the faith. We're impacted with somebody who we've co-authored all these songs with, that we've been on stage with 1,200 times. You know what I mean? I mean, not once. I mean, 1,200. So when you start thinking about that, you start getting impacted. And when Joe first began to speak about this, there was so much negative press and people just railing on him. And so I had to take the position, and a position I felt was a godly position, because everybody wanted us to rail on him too, but I was never ever going to do that. I mean, I had to look at it like this, Kent and Rex. I had to look at it like, listen, now's the time for you to sit and think about if one of the disciples came to Jesus and said, I no longer believe in you, how would he handle that? Well, I can assure you that he wouldn't be railing on them on social media and because it was the religious that he only scourged, you know what I mean, verbally. There was never someone who was a sinner or professed sin or had sin in their lives. Those were the people that he wanted to be with and love. Here's the thing. I just learned that it has to be okay. If it's okay for me to accept Christ, then it needs to be okay for Joe to not accept Christ. And I know that's hard for people to take. And that's hard for us as Christians, because we want everyone. We're just like Jesus. We want everyone to become a follower of Christ. But that's just not in the cards, and it's not going to happen. So what does that mean? Does that mean we can't love that person, be friends with that person? We have to reject that person? The more that time went by, the less desire I had to listen to any of the garbage that was being stated, because at the end of the day, there's no human being that you'd want to love more. Joe is a tremendous person. He is a tremendous thinker, and so he's a person I love, and I won't ever stop loving. And while I wish that he had made a different choice, and he knows that I wish that, he hasn't. But when we see each other, we hug, we embrace, we love each other. We probably love each other more now because of our years than we did when we were in our 20s and 30s. You know what I mean? You learn how important friends are over the years. There's not, if you can name 3 or 4 friends in your life that you still are connected with after so many years, you're a lucky person. Well, I know I have 3. There might be a couple of more, but I know I have 3, and I'm going to protect those friends at all costs. And so that's the position I have with Joe. You know, I know he didn't want to disappoint me. You know, he came to my house personally to tell me this. So just so anybody knows out there in radio land, he didn't call me on the phone. He didn't, you know, send me a fax or a text or whatever the technology at the time. He came to my home and told me what was happening with him. And you know, we had to sit on the couch and say, Joe and Sim, I had to say, Joe, I just, you know, I have to agree to not agree. And I have to agree to love you, but I'm not ever going to change my path. And so that was a decision. So Joe, what Joe professed and where he is in his life also solidified it really put me in a position of maturity and actually pushed me toward Christ. And I probably have dug my heels in even more, and began to just be a stronger follower. That's what happened at that time. I just moved more toward Christ and not more from him. And so it was moving more toward Christ that gave me the grace to stay connected with someone who has moved away from Christ. So that's, you know, that's, I don't know if that is a good enough analogy, or I have a good enough way of explaining it, but that's exactly what happened.
Way up there, imagine what we'll see. Running in the circle, the unbroken promenade.
Sim, you know, for Joe to, gosh, I'm getting emotional here. For him to come to your house and discuss that with you, to me, that tells me all I need to know what he is as a person. I mean, there's definitely love and respect for you, and I'm sure for the rest of the guys in the band. So yeah, to me, that was, he's definitely, you know, did it the right way to talk face to face, and I just really admire his him doing that for you.
Yeah, no, it was really special. And I you know, another thing to think about is that people say, well, why will, you know, the problem is that he says some really, he can really be offensive verbally. You know, you have to understand that Joe is someone who loves to push boundaries and buttons.
Sure.
And he always has, and you can tell it in his, you can see it in his lyrics. You can see it in his, you know, just who he is. And you know, that's just always who he's going to be. And I have to let him be that. But people have asked us, oh, how can you guys play these songs? And why would Joe ever play these songs? But, you know, he loves the band and loves the music, loves what we were able to do. I think the fact that he's big enough to be able to actually still play the music, because let me tell you, after we played the concert and when we got back together and played the House of Blues show before Audio Feed, and it was amazing. We played that House of Blues show in June of 22. I mean, you know, it just felt so powerful, and it had such a, at the end, it was, you know, from my, I describe it that it was just so, the Holy Spirit was just so rich in that place. And he may describe it differently, but he knows that it was powerful, no matter what anybody says. But anyway, he's a tremendously he's a tremendous human being that deserves all the respect that anybody could give him, no matter what his belief is. He's a tremendous person, and one of the people that really is meaningful to the Christian music business. And just because he took a different path doesn't mean his influence, is just completely voided or blanked off the slate. And that's how I feel.
Oh, Joe, as a Christian, you were pushing the buttons and the boundaries, and I thank you for that. And you're doing the same as an atheist. But oh, Joe, I just want to say I love you, and thank you so much for the great music. And I'll always love you, and You were one of my youth ministers. Growing up, you and Undercover. Nothing will take that away. I just want to say, Ojo, I respect you and I thank you. And the same goes for you, Rick Alba. I love you, man. Thanks for the great music and the messages that you left us with throughout the years. And anyway,
yeah, they've taken a lot of heat, and and hey, here's where we are. We're at a place of maturity now.
Yep.
That we can stand up, but we don't need anything from anybody. But we still love to play together, and that's what we found out. When we got back together for both House of Blues in Anaheim and then on into Audio Feed, we really discovered that hey, we can still play and it's still okay. We're going to take some heat for it. People are going to ask the questions and things like that, but we're just going to let the songs speak for themselves. And that's really, I mean, at the end of the day, that's all we have. And if everybody still wants to be connected like that, then if those are going to be, there's going to be naysayers out there that don't think we should be able to do that. Well, I appreciate it if you don't have to come or whatever the case might be. But sure wish you'd support us, but just know that it's coming from a heart from a hearts of love from four people that love each other and know what a special opportunity we had to have these songs and to play these songs for so many people over so many years. And it's nice to be able to do it again. And I will tell you that, people, and not to pat ourselves on the back, but I personally think the House of Blues show was the best show we've ever played in all of our years. It was that good. And I feel like we just didn't lose even a moment. And for me, that's a God thing, so it was a cool opportunity, and so I appreciate you asking.
Oh, and I see the colors of the world, the music of the sky high. I think of you, I think of me, dancing on the purple flower sea. The purple flower sea.
Tim, if you can say, do you guys have any plans for any upcoming shows or not? I maybe took one of Kent's questions, but I just was
September the
curious.
30th, Sim.
Yeah, you mind if I screen share and show this, so you guys could put it on
Sure, go right ahead.
So this is the flyer. So yeah, we're playing September 30th in Nashville. Jim's son London is getting married that week in Nashville to his beautiful wife to be, and we're all going to be at the wedding. And so we thought that we would take another opportunity to play here, where maybe some people that weren't able to get to Audio Feed or certainly weren't able to get to Southern California might be able to come and participate. We're playing at a place called the 5 Spot. They're supposed to have a great, PA. It's supposed to be a great place to play. And, I think it only holds like 225. So it'll be an intimate setting.
Oh.
We're going to, we've got Derry Doherty from the choir doing some acoustic to open for us. And then we're going to just bring a wall of sound and just play for as long as we can tolerate. And, we'll probably do the same set list, very similar to the set list that we did in at House of Blues and at Audio Feed, which were very heavily influenced by Balance of Power and Devotion, and I think that that's kind of where we'll end up, heading on that. So, and then we're gonna play some things that people haven't heard. So, this band play together. So there's going to be some surprises. So everybody come out and see it if you possibly can. We have a lot of people driving a long way from a lot of places. So it's just going to be a fun time. We're going to hang out as a family with whoever's there for as long as we can all stay awake, and whatever restaurant's going to let us in, and we're just going to make it a big, just a big reunion, family time with all the people that we love and that'll come and support us.
Sam, you all look so young in that brand new picture. You know, I don't know what y'all just get younger by the minute.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You know, we're aging well. We're aging well.
You certainly are. So
but,
you once saying, Sam, you know, time is slipping away from me. And so 2 decades later, like 21 years later, there you are at the House of Blues in 2022. Audio feed in 2022. And I think Ojo stated in an interview that these times were the first time, I guess House of Blues was the first time performing live together in 12 years. And it's kind of the same with the I Rose Falling album, Sim. What was the catalyst that made you say, hey guys, let's pick back up and let's start doing some of these live shows again?
Well, I mean, we were all supporting a project that John Smaby from Morality Rock did. So he produced an album called Fourth Wave, I think is the name. And so everybody was getting together to do kind of a release night for that. And so a lot of the bands had just shown up and were playing acoustic at a little, at just a little restaurant, you know what I mean? And so when that happened, our music doesn't really translate acoustically very well. They wanted us to play. So what we said was, guys, we're not going to be able to do acoustic anything, but what we will do is we'll see if we can. Why don't we try to play during that same weekend? And so that's exactly what we did. And so we got some people on the inside that contacted House of Blues. They don't do anything on a Sunday night, never have any bands because nobody comes on a Sunday night. So we got a Sunday night, but they were literally shocked when we sold that thing out to the walls. And man, what a night that was. It was just that to me was one of my favorite nights because we just got back together. We rehearsed a few times that week, and then went out to play, and it was just special. My voice was especially was feeling especially good. And what was important to me was I was going to sing every note and every scream and everything, because I wanted people to know that that we hadn't lost a step, and that was important to me. And so I got to feel good about that night because of those things, and it was just amazing. And it was that night that we just said, man, this just feels way too good and way too comfortable. We like to play. And how many times can you be in a band that's just like that? I mean, it's so unusual to first of all be in a band, but to be in a band where that kind of sound comes out. We just all love it. And I guess we're fans of the sound that we produce as friends that we're able, and so we just want to share that. That's kind of where we are right now.
So I'm curious, Sim, you're really talking about this House of Blues performance. Was that recorded audio or video at all by you guys or anyone that you know of?
Good question. Unfortunately not, although we have lots of phone recordings that some people have kind of like strung together and tried to create some recordings. So I think there's actually some things out there that are from that night, but they're only clips. And the reason was, and I know this sounds crazy, but House of Blues wanted like $7,000 for us to record that, and we just didn't have the horsepower to be able to do that. You know what I mean? It was just like we didn't want to. Now that we look back, we're like, we probably just should have spent the money and done it. But man, that was a high price to pay. So it's going to have to live on everybody's phones and in everybody's memories.
Sam, I just have two more questions, if I may. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an honor. This new album, do you all happen to have a working title for it? And if you do, can you disclose it?
It is. There's no working title, and it's still just a thought process right now. We haven't started anything, although there are, Joe has some songs and Jim has songs. The biggest key was trying to find a lyrical platform and a lyrical base that we all feel comfortable that we could live in. And we found that. You know what it was? Just love. Just the love of each other. And I know, no matter what, that survives all and covers a multitude of whatever. So we hope that can be a platform that we can draw off of, but we'll see. I would love it to happen. If it never happens, the love we have for each other remains, and we still would like to see ourselves be able to do that. And I think we're all in a position where it becomes a lot easier at this time of our lives to be able to, take the time out and know the importance of certain things. And so we're looking at it very diligently, but you guys will be some of the first to know, I'm sure, if we can get it pulled off.
So it's Undercover, covering the multitude, Sim said. No.
We'll
but
see.
I'll tell you what, Sim, that would give a great reason for another interview in the future. Maybe with you and some of your bandmates. So, Sam, my last question to you is, if you could make a brief statement to leave a lasting impression with your fans and friends, what would you wish to tell them?
What I would say is that I just, it's just humbling to have been a part of this for all these years. It's not something I had, ever dreamed of doing. And obviously I get emotional. To know the impact of these songs, and to be able to live in a place where social media has caught up to us, to where we can hear the stories from decades of people who have been impacted by the lyrics, by the songs. You know, to be a part of that is just so special, and I just appreciate the support of everybody that's been there, that's listened to these songs, that has, you know, been to a concert and supported this band. We just are so appreciative, and that's what I would say, is that just so that you know, we are truly humbled by that, and it's not something that we pat ourselves on the back and feel like rock stars. It's in fact, it's the reverse. We feel like servants. We feel like that we brought songs to the table, and somehow, some way, we served them up, and they were good to taste, and we appreciate everybody's support with it. You don't know how much it means to us to be able to read that. It means something to our families. It means something to our children, to have had that kind of legacy. So, you know, all I can say is thank you, and God bless you to everyone who's been a part of that.
Continue looking through the eyes of love, the eyes of love. I'm looking through the eyes of love, the eyes of love.
Thank you, Sam. And yeah, I want to get a little emotional again too, I guess. But you know, you guys were, Rex and I have talked about this, you know, behind the scenes many a time, but all you guys, I mean, Undercover was, I'm going to say, on the first wave of the actual Christian rock movement. I mean, you know, there was the Jesus music, and then here came Christian rock, and Undercover were certainly pioneers with the brand that you all were bringing. Rex and I both let each other know that you guys were speaking our language, not just lyrically very important, but musically. And I think you're looking at two people, Sam, who got it. You guys were like youth ministers to us growing up, and that's why we do this. And it's kind of emotional, just because we, you know, we're all just people here saved by the grace of through the Lord Jesus. But we are just thankful for the message and the language that you brought. And I knew there was nothing wrong with me growing up. You know, this kid who grew up in the Baptist church at the time, you know, I'm just a Christian today, nothing against Baptists, but by and large, the Baptist church didn't understand my language. You know, I was speaking the Bible was speaking to me, but there was also this lingo that went with it, and that was rock and roll. And that was you guys, you know. And I just want to say thank you, Sam, for helping this younger brother know that it was okay to walk this straight and narrow path that had this lingo to it, you know, in the Lord. And so thank you, Jim, thank you, Gary Dean Olson, thank you, Ojo Taylor.
I'll say as I leave, that cultural language was a unique language, and I'll leave by saying that there were so many people for it, so many people against it, but I will tell you, the only person who maintained support of Christian music, of Undercover, of all the stuff that was going on throughout his entire career was Billy Graham. So when you got Billy Graham, one of the greatest evangelists, if not the greatest evangelist of all times, that supports whatever cultural medium that that evangelism is happening in, well, I think you've got some pretty good support there. So he was the only one that never wavered, and I thank him and his whole organization. But there was a lot of bickering about it, but the bottom line is the music went forward, and I know that the Lord was behind it, because he transcends language and transcends culture. And so here we are today to talk about it. And I wanted to thank Kent, both you and Rex. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been a great time to share together. and I hope we get to do it again someday.
Yes, sir.
Well, and if I could ask real quick, Sim, where is like the best place for your friends and fans to connect with Undercover? What would be the best avenue to do that?
I think the only avenue in today's world is Facebook. I think that's where the most traffic happens. There really isn't much beyond, beyond all of our feeds on Facebook.
Okay.
But that's probably the place to connect with us the most in today's diverse world of social media. Facebook seems to have has the most activity. So that's what I would say is the right place.
Okay.
We will put that link in our description. And friends, they also have a Bandcamp that has some not too distant in the past, a remastered version of Balance of Power and Devotion that you've heard us talk so much about. Two brilliant albums. So I'll also post that link in the description. Sim, thank you for blessing us today. Thank you so much. It's an honor.
Thank you.
Before you go, Sim, Rex is we always do a little scripture closeout at the end of every program. We call it a message from home. And
Love it.
Rex will read that. And then Sim, before you completely close out, just stick around for one more moment after we say goodbye.
Sounds good.
Well, Sim, the scripture that came to me to read today, it's based on one of your best known recordings. And it's from 2 Kings chapter 20 verse 3, and it reads, "Remember, Lord, how I walked before you faithfully and with wholehearted devotion, and have done what is good in your eyes." And that is Hezekiah speaking with the Lord or praying, and your recording Devotion from 1992 was named Devotion there, of course. And so I just thought that was a good scripture for you guys. And like you said, the band is definitely devoted, and you have a lot of devoted fans in that too. And we just love and appreciate everything you guys have done over the years. So thank you again, Sim.
Thank you, Rex. Thank you, Ken.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So friends, it's been an honor today to have Sim, and we'll just sign off. Thanks everybody for watching. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Rain will stop before the flood, sin forgiven through his blood. Eternal